up, guys? Welcome back to the Jenks Island podcast, the only NFL podcast bringing you your takes from a washed-up Division III cornerback. I'm your host, Grayson Jenkins, joined again by my good friend, Ty McGee. In today's episode, we're breaking down the Week 5 slate of NFL games, giving our picks, our hot takes, and fantasy sleepers of the week at the end. This week, there's a few fun games and there's a few iffy games in there as well, but there is another international game. The Vikings are overseas 2 weeks in a row for, I think, the first time that's occurred in the NFL so far. And there's a few big news stories that we have to break down as well getting into this week. Before we get into that, though, we're going to be breaking down our weekly pick'em leaders. And number one is once again is the Penix Fluffer at 48-15. 2 is King Raw and ESPN at 47-16. Cooper is in fourth with two other people at 46-17. Ty is at tied for seventh at 45-18. I am tied for 14th at 43-20. And then Hammer is down at 17th with 41-22. And Sturb is at 40-23. So those guys and myself included need to come back. Ty is a little bit up there. We got to catch up to Ty and then everyone else up there at the top. So getting into Week 5, right? Thursday Night Football. This game was slated to be a really fun Thursday Night Football game. Everyone was like, Thursday Night Football is coming different this year. We had the Cardinals and the Seahawks last week. This 49ers and Rams matchup was slated to be really, really good. And then all these injuries happened. They're out Purdy, Pearsall, and Juwan Jennings on offense. Obviously, Kittle was out previously and is still out. So those are big blows for this team. And without those guys, this matchup against the Rams, who have this connection between Matt Stafford and Puka Nacua, right? Seemingly being the second coming of Cooper Kupp, Michael Thomas, those guys that just absolutely balled out as far as receptions go. Puka Nacua, obviously, Xavier Howard just announced his retirement today. And, someone put out a post saying this is like the greatest aura moment in any NFL in NFL history, just because you played so well. You forced a guy to really just think about it. Like, is this game for me still? And he retired. So that's crazy. Puka Nacua obviously is the receiver just that's killing everyone in fantasy. So if you drafted him in the draft, great for you. You're really, really lucky. I'm so pissed that, I was like, Devontae Adams going to steal reps, right? Things like that. But this game, there's not too much analysis for me. I think the Rams are too good of a team to lose to this beat up 49ers team. And for that reason, I'm just going to go with the Rams. I think they're a great team in the NFC. I think they're a real Super Bowl contender, and they'll continue to be a good team this season. So the Rams are my pick. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Mac has, kept them competitive at times, but like you said, without so many of those receiving options with Kittle, with Pearsall, with Jennings, right? It's like they were already down Ayuk. I think that puts Kendrick Bourne and Demarcus Robinson as wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. They're serviceable options, but they're not going to beat a team like the Rams, right? So, and the Rams, just a really strong showing last week against Indianapolis, right? Obviously, offense was clicking, but defensively, some guys in their secondary able to make some really, really big turnovers. Cam Curl had a great game. Jared Verse had a strip sack, right? So, obviously the front was something that we knew was going to be dominant for them this year, but it was good to see the back end guys like Cam Curl really show out, because that was a question mark for this team. So I think they come out, they make a statement, right, against the banged up 49ers team, and they keep rolling as, one of my top 5 teams in the NFL. And I think they're only going to continue to move up the board.
Yeah, it's a real bummer for the 49ers too, because this is a huge game for the playoff seedings later on in the season, and having these injuries right before this one, it just sucks, especially with it being a short week. Like Thursday Night Football, we've had a lot of times where people are questioning just the logistics of it with 2 games being played within a 5-day span, especially in the NFL. It's tough. Moving on to the London game of the week, another early game. We have a bunch this year, so that's great for the people on the East Coast, not so great for the people on the West Coast and earlier time zones. But Ty, what are your thoughts on this one? Dillon Gabriel getting his first start for the Browns.
Yeah, Dillon Gabriel getting his first start. I do think that gives the Browns a bit of a bump, right? I do think that, he brings a different level of aura than Flacco had, right? Flacco was just, I feel like he's kind of reached that point in his career where, he's so kind of washed that some of those interceptions were just god awful, right? Like we expected to see some of that little bit of Flacco magic that we saw last time when he was with the Browns, but he's just continued to kind of descend since then. I liked Gabriel. I don't, I didn't think he was going to deserve to be like a first round, second round pick, but his third round pick, I was like, this is a good flyer on a guy. I like some of the young guys that they've surrounded him with, right? They have a nice little young core with him and Judkins and Sampson and Fannin and Isaiah Bond, who is going to get a chance to be the wide receiver 2, possibly
Yep.
the wide receiver 1 this week with Cedric Tillman down, right? Last week, he was their yards leader. And, with Gabriel and Bond, they work together obviously a lot on the second team all off season long. So I expect them to have a really good connection. But unfortunately for them, they meet a buzzsaw in Minnesota who happens to be over in the UK for another week, right? Obviously playing in London last week. So it's a huge advantage because they don't have to do the travel
Yep.
thing. The Browns have to do this week. And it's just the defense with Minnesota, right? Obviously last week they, looked fine against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a pretty good team right now, but you got to think back to 2 weeks ago when they played Cincinnati, the absolute thrashing that they gave Jake Browning. I don't, Jake Browning versus Aaron Rodgers, right? Obviously the level of competition is different. You think about Dylan Gabriel, he's obviously a lot closer to Jake Browning at this point in his career, right? Obviously very unproven. Could he be a good quarterback? Sure. But I don't see a way that Brian Flores in this defense doesn't really dial it up against the Browns. The only thing that could
Mhm.
really kill Minnesota would be if Judkins had a really, really strong game because, in games that they have struggled in, running backs like Kenneth Gainwell, Bijan Robinson have had really good games against them. But, this defense is rolling on all cylinders right now. Obviously, so is Cleveland's, but they're just not as talented of an overall team as the Vikings. And I mean, Carson Wentz with Jordan Addison in one of his first games back at 300 yards and, in a loss. So I'm going to go with Minnesota here, but I think Cleveland could make this a little bit more of a close game.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's pretty good thoughts on this game. And that it's tough for me to make this pick. And like you said, I think Carson Wentz had a solid game, but there were moments where he definitely tried to throw the game away. And also there was some sacks and the O-line was struggling. I think if the O-line struggles like it did last week, which I think it could with Myles Garrett, he's been playing absolutely at an insane level this season so far. I think that continues, and I think the Browns can pull out a win, even though the Vikings did have that advantage of staying over for another week. I think the Browns can win this game. I think it'll be very, very sloppy. I'll say that right now. This seems like a very sloppy game to me, just because I think Carson Wentz facing a defense that puts pressure on him, he'll throw a couple picks, and Dylan Gabriel playing one of the defenses that's the best at scheming up different types of pressures, different fake looks, things like that. So this is going to be a crazy game, and it might not be the best game to wake up and watch right away to start your morning, but it's a fun one to see what Dylan Gabriel does in this one. And this is my underdog pick of the week. I'm going to go with the Browns here in this one. And I forgot to
To
say
add
this.
on to your, I
Sorry,
was just going to say that.
go ahead.
No,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, all right, yeah. To add on to your point, right, with Ryan Kelly and Brian O'Neill possibly out too, right? Ryan Kelly concussed, Brian O'Neill pulled out of the last game, so yeah, I mean, it could definitely be a good game for Myles Garrett, but just wanted to add in that point about the O-line.
Yeah, no, and I'll say this. I had to add this real quick. The Rams are one of my locks of the week. I forgot to say that, but they're going to be one of my locks with all those guys out for the 49ers. Moving on to Houston, taking on Baltimore. The Ravens obviously are down Lamar Jackson, but let me just go over this injury report for you guys real quick because it's not just Lamar Jackson that's out for them. Kyle Hamilton was limited today. Shidobi Awuzie, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, but he's obviously a good player for them. The corner. Yeah. Good luck with that. Come on. DNP as well. Marlon Humphrey didn't participate. I think he's going to be out a little while. Let's see. You got your center, Linderbaum, limited participation. Patrick Ricard, DNP. Roquan Smith, DNP. Ronnie Staley, DNP. Like, this is just absurd. Devontae Walker, DNP, and Nate Wiggins, DNP as well.
Already down Dominique Matabike too, so.
Yeah. And so this game, like, I don't know, all those guys are out for you. Obviously, the Texans, not the best team right now. We just saw them whoop the Panthers, but this is a team that's been struggling offensively. And now they go up against the Ravens, whose defense has been struggling this whole season. So this is a really good opportunity for the Texans to, gain ground in that AFC discussion. And I think the Texans can come out and win this game. They are my pick. I picked the Texans to win this one over the Ravens. I know that's going to surprise some people, but without Lamar Jackson, Cooper Rush obviously he's not unfamiliar with going in and spoiling games as the backup quarterback. But I think CJ Stroud can lead this team to victory against the beat up Ravens defense, and without a Lamar Jackson led Ravens offense, that's going to be really tough for them to overcome. So I'm going to go the Texans here. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, the injury report stacks it all up, right? And this Ravens team is kind of, offensive line wise wasn't that great anyway. So the Lamar
Yep.
Jackson, the legs that affected the game, like made this a dangerous team. With Cooper Rush not being the most athletic guy, he's obviously had some success in Dallas in his career, but I don't see a way that this team, unless Derrick Henry has an absurd game, but the shitty part is he's going against the Houston Texans defense, which is one of the best in the NFL. So I just don't see a pathway for Baltimore winning this game if Lamar Jackson's out. If Lamar Jackson plays and all those other guys are out, you never know, right? Because Houston's looked horrendous, but I don't think that Lamar's going to play. All rumors kind of point to that he might miss a couple weeks.
Yep.
So I think that Houston finds a way to win. And you know what? Sneaky part about Houston right now is, right, we were really concerned about the offensive line and the run game. Woody Marks has kind of been, and I love Woody Marks. I've kind of been onto him for a bit now, USC guy. He has re-energized that run game, right? Then no Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb he had some fine moments here and there, but Woody Marks, despite a really, really bad offensive line, has looked tremendous. And I look for him to continue rolling this week against the Ravens, who are a banged up team.
Yeah, it just makes too much sense for this Texans team to be able to, kind of take a step up again this week and just improve themselves week in, week out. So we'll see how that continues the rest of the season. Moving on to the most exciting game of the week, we got the Dolphins taking on the Panthers in Charlotte, North Carolina, my future hometown. Get to be a Saints fan down there and just trash talk the Panthers because they're gonna suck forever, and I'm determined to believe that. Anyways, Ty, what are your thoughts on this one? It's a really exciting matchup here.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about, what has these two teams done resume wise this season, right? The Panthers obviously had a great game against the Falcons. They kind of always have a great game against the Falcons. I think Bryce Young's like 3-1 against them in his career. And then they follow that up with an absolute stinker against the Patriots. Miami, they have looked at least competitive in every single game, I think, except for week
Except
one,
for
right?
the first one, yeah.
Yeah. They scored a ton against Buffalo. They scored a ton against the Jets, right? Like, the offense, even despite Tyreek Hill going down, right? They have Darren Waller kind of had a little bit of a breakout game, right? Two touchdowns and crazy quote. He said he felt like he was on drugs. He felt like he was high or something like that.
And for him to say that, that's
guy who was addicted to crack cocaine, but
and who knows, Ty, him saying that maybe there's like a little bit of a iffy future for him later in the season.
Yeah, I pray not. I pray that
obviously
he can stay clean, but he's obviously playing really good football right now. So him, Jalen Waddle, Devin Achane, right? They give this offense a boost, even despite not having Tyreek Hill. I just don't see a way that this Carolina team can pull it out. I mean, they look absolutely horrendous. Like, I really think that Atlanta game was such a fluke, a divisional game. I mean, just think about common opponents, right? What do these two teams do against New England, right? Like, Miami scored a ton of points. Carolina, that last game, I mean, I cannot stress how bad that was, right? Like, there's no
great.
And the flip between two games, there is no bigger difference between lambasting the Falcons and then this game. I mean, so with all that being said, right, obviously I'm going with Miami here just because I think that their offense has the ability to score more points than Carolina does, even though Miami's defense is not great by any means.
Yeah, nothing to add here. The Dolphins, I do believe, win this game as well. The Panthers beating the Falcons was nothing but a boost for the Saints' playoff hopes that are still alive at the moment. They're really not, but they're not mathematically eliminated yet. And also, Michael Thomas and Darren Waller is the first player since Michael Thomas a few years ago to not play a whole entire season and then come back in their first game and score 2 touchdowns. So special bunch.
3 catches. On 3 catches.
Yeah. He was just pure red zone. And obviously, like, that was a guy for everyone that picked him up in fantasy. I know a lot of people definitely didn't have him starting. So that was just like a rough moment. So and here's the thing, I don't know if he replicates that. Like, now that's the kind of performance where, like, he goes out and does that and everyone starts putting him in lineups, and then
he's a touchdown threat, right? Like, he's not going to score a ton, but he's one of those guys that, especially without Tyreek, right? And the way that this offense is, they're not as much of a vertical offense anymore. They're more horizontal. He's at least a touchdown threat. So
yeah. It's almost like Jimmy Graham when he came back, like, his last year. Like, he had like 5 touchdowns, but he literally did nothing else. Like, there was no
Him and
Yeah,
AJ Barner right now are kind of in the
yeah,
same world.
yeah. Just red zone threats, but you're not putting them in for fantasy for like multiple receptions.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on to Las Vegas taking on the Indianapolis Colts. The Raiders, obviously, Geno Smith struggling is an understatement for Geno right now. That the Raiders go out, pay for him to be their guy, and he has struggled. Multiple 3-pick games already through week 4. Obviously, we're in week 5 now. The good thing for them, though, Ashton Genty, right? 3 touchdowns total on the day. And it looked like, that's the game where he's going to come out and they're going to win this game. Then they let the Bears come back into it, and the Bears pull off a good comeback for the Bears and Ben Johnson and that young, the new era there for the Bears. I mean, Ashton Genty, he came out after the game and said he would have rather won than have 3 touchdowns, right? And that's what you want to see from a young running back. I don't know if someone like Shadur Sanders would have said a quote like that based on his actions today as well. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later in the episode. But I just think the Raiders team right now, where they're at in comparison to the Colts, who did lose the Rams, they're in a worse spot. The Colts, without AD Mitchell fumbling the ball in the end zone and then a holding call that basically just got rid of a Jonathan Taylor touchdown run, they win that game. They win that game. And we were just talking about the Rams earlier. They're a very, very tough team in the NFL right now. The Colts are still in that top. I'll give them the top 12 right now after that loss. I think they're still in that top 12. The Raiders are not. I'm going to go with the Colts here at home, especially. I'm going to go with Colts in this one. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, for me, the Colts are very much still a top 10 team, right? They lost to the Rams, who I think are a top 5 team in a very, very close game. Um, they're just the better football team in this game, right? Outside of last game, they're playing very, very clean football, right? Obviously, a couple turnovers. The Raiders, right? Geno just can't seem to get out of his own way, despite having, a pretty good offense, right? Genty, he hit back into his college Mike Myers stance, and he goes crazy again. He's got Brock Bowers, he's got Jacoby Myers, right? They have some young threats outside of Myers at the receiver position. So it's like Geno's just getting in his own way, and he's going to continue to do that, I think, especially against a Colts defense who's pretty good. And on the flip side, right, the Raiders team they're not forcing Daniel Jones and this team to turn over the football.
Yep.
This is easily a Colts win for me. Raiders just disappointing, really disappointing.
You locking it up?
No.
Okay. Stay tuned for Ty's locks. I like it. Anyways, moving on to the Giants taking on my New Orleans Saints. We got Jaxson Dart, who just won and beat in a big upset over the Chargers. They went out and beat the Chargers in New York. They did lose Malik Neighbors. The Saints, obviously, also in New York, went and lost the Bills in a competitive game until the very end. They did end up letting the Bills kind of break away at the end there. If Spencer Rattler hit an extra, like a touchdown pass to Brandon Cooks, where he was wide open in the end zone, threw it behind and low. The Saints take the lead late in the game, and maybe it's a little bit of a different story. I think the Saints are a competitive team. I think the Giants are going to be, they have the momentum going into this one. Right now, without Malik Neighbors, that's a tough spot for Jaxson Dart. I think their O-line is solid. It's nothing great, though. Their D-line is really where the threat is. And then you have Cam Scatterbo, who obviously is the CTE boy, as everyone likes to call him. Like, he just dives his head into everything, anyone and everyone. And he's obviously an aggressive runner, and that's kind of what you want to see from a running back. But I also just don't think the Giants have a lot of talent on offense right now with Malik Neighbors going out. And I think Jaxson Dart, and Ty, I'm sure you'll agree with this, is a good rushing threat. But passing, he hasn't shown a whole lot yet passing, and I want to see him develop that. And maybe he can do that against the Saints defense, because we're a little bit iffy right now. The Saints, I think our offense will be able to succeed again this week at a relatively average level. I think that's kind of where we're at right now as far as offense goes. You can get the run game going against this team, then we have a shot. And we're at home. I'm going to give the Saints the win. This game's a toss-up. I think you could pick either team and kind of be give reasoning for it. I'm going to go with the Saints at home. I think Spencer Rattler gets his first win and breaks the 0-10 record and losing streak. Who do you got, Ty?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jenks. I got to go with the Giants here, right? Obviously, coming into the draft process, I was obviously very, very high on Jaxson Dart. Yeah. He's my number 2 quarterback in this class. I had him well above Shadur. Obviously, he went number 2 in the class, right? Mm-hmm. I'm really high on him. I think, obviously without Neighbors, that's a huge hit. But think about the receivers that they have on the outside of Slayton and Jalen Hyatt. They play, and I know Jalen Hyatt has not done anything in his career thus far, but think about on paper, right? They play right into Jaxson Dart's, his strengths. The deep ball. The deep ball is Jaxson Dart's best. Outside, I think he's obviously a great runner, but his best attribute is the deep ball. Jalen Hyatt and Slayton are both really good deep threats against a Saints defense that's not great. They're fine, but
Yeah.
I think that Dart can kind of get rolling here in this game. Obviously he looked decent against a Chargers defense that's really good. Obviously looked better running the ball than throwing the ball. But I think this is a game, and I talked about it a long time ago, right? I thought this was the game that Dart should have started as his first game because easier opponent, right? More confidence underneath you going into that game. But I think Dart gets on track, right? They have some young guys with Scatabo and stuff like that. But I think this says more about the Giants' defense. But this defense obviously looked very, very good last week against the Chargers. Forced Justin Herbert into some mistakes. He just didn't look like his normal self, right? They couldn't get anything going. So I like the fact that, Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence and Abdul Carter, Kayvon, I think they can get after the quarterback this week, cause some havoc, and Jaxson Dart can do enough to help win this game.
Yeah, and I'll say this as well. If the Saints do lose this game and Spencer Rattler, if he doesn't play at like a decent level, I think Spencer Rattler's time could be done after this week. Or if he has a bad performance, I think it's definitely done. I think he has to win or at least look competitive in this game and then the next one. And if he doesn't, I think he's done. And Tyler Shuck will be put in because you really have to see what you have in him. But Spencer Rattler to this point has played at a high enough level where you're like not really considering it yet. So we'll see how this one plays out. It's huge for Rattler. And this, if Jaxson Dart goes and gets 2 straight wins, it's big for him and the Giants. So we'll keep an eye on this one, even though it's not the prettiest on paper. Moving on to the Cowboys taking on the Jets. The Cowboys obviously go out and tie with the Packers. No one expected that at all. I think everyone expected the Packers to blast them. I had them as my lock. Thank God it ended in a tie, so it didn't negate me any points against Ty and Sturb. But I think the Cowboys are a team where they lost CeeDee Lamb, right? And so you expect a lot less from that offense. Dak Prescott and George Pickens just went and proved that they're still a capable offense. Javonte Williams is solid. Obviously, Tolbert made a few big catches there as well. So they got that going. The Jets on the other side just look like a really unorganized team right now. I don't think Aaron Glenn has done a good job of coaching out mistakes. They've made mistakes numerous times and numerous occasions, whether that be clock management, whether that be penalties, whether that be decisions on the field and like whether they're going for it or not going for it, or just decisions all over the place. I'm not rocking with it. I don't think Aaron Glenn looks like a good head coach. And I know Sturb was really, really high on Aaron Glenn in the offseason, but right now it's just not looking good. And we could say that that's the Jets, right? Every single head coach that goes there right now is just kind of, it's not a good place. It's not a good place at all. And maybe some head coach or Aaron Glenn does turn around, but for right now, the Jets look like a lost team, and they still don't even know how to use their best weapon, Garrett Wilson. It took them until the last minute to have to throw up a fade ball to him, who is a guy that's known to be able to make crazy catches like that. So until they get that turned around, I just can't pick them. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys here in this one. They just went toe-to-toe with the Packers. I think they can go toe-to-toe and beat the Jets as well. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Cowboys too. I think offensively, right, they just bring a lot of firepower. But I will say this about the Jets, right? I think it's a little too soon to be out on Aaron Glenn, right? I think
That's fair.
obviously it's not like the team has looked sloppy, right? But think about outside of that Buffalo game where they have a quarterback change, obviously due to injury mid-game, they have been competitive in every single game, right? They barely lost the Steelers, who are 3-1, looking like one of the better teams in the NFL right now. They barely lost the Buccaneers, who are 3-1 and look like a top 5 to 10 team right now. And then, obviously the Miami game, not great, but they're at least competitive within that game, right? So that they're fighting in every single game. I think that this is a team that as the season goes on, they'll continue to get better. I like Justin Fields, right? I obviously see a lot of the issues with him. He's not the most accurate passer, but he's a special player, right? He obviously brings a ton of athleticism. He has the connection with Garrett Wilson. Like at some point, that's got to start clicking. Brees Hall looked good again this past game. So I think, I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised again if this was a close game for the Jets. But I think, like I said, Dallas's offense is just way too high powered right now. even without CeeDee Lamb. They have so many weapons with Ferg and Javante and Pickens and even Tolbert.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and let me say this real quick. I was very upset in the usage of Breece Hall at a point in the game last week before obviously Braylon Allen went out, and you don't ever want to see him go out with injuries, things like that. But they were using Braylon Allen way more than I think they should have. And I think Braylon Allen's solid, right? But Breece Hall was playing really, really well in that game. And then they just kind of took him off the field, let Braylon Allen do a little bit, and then he fumbled near the end zone. Like I just think that was a little bit tough. And I want to see Breece Hall's usage go up if they're going to keep running the ball like they do. Moving on, Ty, to your team, the Broncos getting their first win after not first win, but first win after two big losses, obviously to both field goals, right? Game-ending field goals. That's not something that's fun for a fan to watch. You know that best. And obviously, the Broncos come out and beat the Bengals. Could be a get right game, and they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles. Who better to play to have another test here? Who do you got in this one? And what are your thoughts on the Broncos?
yeah, obviously last week was a really good get right game. 500 yards compared to only I think less than 200 yards for Cincinnati. Obviously Cincinnati not a great team, but what they were able to do in dominating in every phase of the game is that says a lot, right? Look at Buffalo last week. They didn't dominate the Saints, right? Should they have on paper? Yes, but
Yeah.
so if you're just able to physically dominate a team, that obviously says a lot about you. It was good to see RJ Harvey start to get rolling. The receivers, like Troy Franklin's got to catch the goddamn football at some point. Like, right, like we're starting to blame Bo for things that are going right through guys' hands, but he, obviously Bo looked to get back on track there. Had some really nice darts to Mims to Sutton. So
Yep.
offensively, they started to look really good again. And now they meet a team that's 4-0, but kind of a very ugly 4-0, right? Right now, the Eagles rank 30th in total offense, 22nd in total defense, and they lead the league in third and out rate. I mean, how often have we seen a team play this horribly in every phase of the game and be tied for first in win percentage in the league right now? It's just unheard of. Obviously they have a lot of locker room issues right now with the AJ Brown situation.
Yep.
You can kind of see where I'm going with this, right? I'm going to take Denver as my upset of the week. This is a team that hasn't trailed once in the fourth quarter this year, and they're one of two teams with a positive point differential in every single quarter, right? At some point, it's got to click. This is a team that is 2 field goals away from 4-0. This is a 4-0 versus 4-0 matchup. Denver obviously had some offensive struggles to start the season. Every week, I think that they've gotten better. Even that Chargers game, I think they got better than they were in the Indianapolis game, especially Bo Nix. I think Sean Payton's kind of figuring out with the play calling, with especially the split with the backs, right? We've got to see RJ Harvey really take a step up. And I just think that, outside of the offense, right, that this game does live and die with Bo Nix, right? If Bo Nix plays well, Denver can definitely win this game. If he does not play well, I don't see a path to winning this game. But I think Denver's defense, right? Philly hasn't seen a defense like this yet. The Rams would be the closest to that. The Rams don't have a secondary that even touches the field with Denver's right now, right? Like, you got to look at just the whole entire roster, whole entire depth chart defensively. Benito and Cooper, they lead the league in pressure rate right now, first and second, like time to pressure, right? That is, it's just top to bottom, right? A lot of the guys are playing really, really well. So, I know this isn't a link. I know that's a tough environment. Obviously, the Super Bowl champs, right? 4-0, yada, yada. At some point, this team has to lose, right? They're not going to go undefeated. And I think it's time they meet their maker, right? I don't think that this team can continue to just play so poorly in all phases of the game and win football games. So I think it's going to be Denver this week.
Yeah, I think this game, like you said, is a lot closer than people think. The Eagles on the other side, right? The Broncos lose to 2 field goals. The Eagles, if they don't block a kick, and if CeeDee Lamb doesn't drop a couple passes for the Cowboys, this game could be a 2-2 team versus a 2-2 team. Like that, it could be that close, and that's the whole if world that the NFL lives in sometimes. But the Eagles are 4-0. They've won in clutch situations. They didn't have a single passing yard in the second half last week, and they somehow beat the Bucs, and that's impressive in its own right, but also at the same time very, very depressing for that team and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Like that's an upsetting stat. If you're a star receiver like AJ Brown is, you should be getting more targets. You should be getting more yards. You should have just more production in general. I think AJ Brown is definitely a top 6, top 7 receiver in the league. I think that's a
bare
fair
minimum top 10.
Yeah, bare minimum top 10. And they're just not giving him the ball like he is one. And when they did, against the Rams, they finally started giving the ball. He played like it, right? We saw the production on the field. So I want to see how the Broncos team, right, if they can limit Saquon Barkley. If you limit Saquon Barkley, you force the Eagles in that passing game. How do they adjust and how do they slow it down? How does it all work? I want to see that happen on the field this week. I want to see the Broncos slow them down. I was really happy to see RJ Harvey getting involved, a guy that I was really high on in the offseason. I will say the home field advantage is the only reason I'm really doing this. And also because I have to come back and pick them. I'll go with the Eagles to change it up, give us a little bit of a different perspective here on this one. But I think that this matchup, very, very even. I think it's a coin flip for whoever wins. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos win either. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles won. I think this is a really fun matchup. And this is the game to watch this week. Moving on to the Titans taking on the Cardinals. Arizona obviously just announced that Trey Benson is out for 2 weeks after multiple weeks. So I don't know. I said 2, but they're down their top two running backs. That's where I was going. And now they have Amari DiMercado and Michael Carter are the 2 running backs they're going to be kind of relying on now that those 2 guys are out. The Titans on the other side, as Cam Ward said, they're ass. Like, they suck. Like, it is a crazy thing for a quarterback to come out and say that his own team is ass, but at least he's being realistic, right? For the Titans fans out there, if they get the number 1 pick and you have a quarterback, that's a much better spot to be in than having the number 1 pick and no quarterback. So I think this Titans team, they're on the verge of turning it around, right? They're on the right path, but at this point in time, they're not a good team. The Cardinals, they're a solid team. They're down their two running backs. They need to get this pass game going, and what better game to do that against the Titans? I know their front line is pretty good on defense. Outside of that, they're still a solid defense, but it's not unbeatable. And I think this is a good game where the Cardinals can build off of what they did last week to end the game. And obviously Marvin Harrison Jr., right, was trash in the first half of that game against the Seahawks, turned it around in the second half. On Twitter, I posted and I said, when is it time to have a conversation about Marvin Harrison Jr.? He came out in the second half, made me eat my words, shut me up. He balled out. So maybe you see that build up a little bit more this week. I'm going to go with Cardinals here. I wouldn't be surprised if the Titans get their first win, but I just think the Cardinals are the better team, so I'm going to have to go with them. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a bit earlier in the season, right? I think this Cardinals team still to this point could be a wild card team, right? They're 2-2. They lost to the 49ers and the Seahawks by a total of 4 points, right? Like, they didn't, obviously offensively, right? They have some room to move, but like when you're playing those close of a games, right? I think, there's room for improvement, and they're playing a really, really bad team, right? Like the Titans, like you said, they're crap, like Cam Ward said it himself. So, and I kind of like Amari DeMercado, right? I think, he'll help them out in the pass game. He's a pass catching option. Scored a touchdown last week for them. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals here because actually one of my locks, Cardinals over the Titans.
Interesting. I like it. Yeah. And I will say this, like Arizona against the Seahawks, right? Obviously the kicker kicked it short of the landing zone, and that fueled a big discussion. But maybe if that doesn't happen, maybe they win that game and the conversation around them is a little bit more different. But he did kick it short, so it's not like I'm not opposed to the new rule. I don't mind it, but he did kick it short. They lost the game, but I think the Cardinals bounced back here in this one. Moving on, tied to the Bucs taking on the Seahawks, another fun game. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, really, really good game. Seattle right now playing really, really well in both phases, right? Defensively, we knew they were going to be a good defense. Coming into the season, the question mark was, what kind of quarterback can Sam Darnold be? And obviously Darnold's looked pretty good, right? He hasn't been a world beater, but he's kind of continued on a similar path that he had in Minnesota. I think he had a better season last season in Minnesota, but they're kind of figuring out the run game, what they want to do with Sharps and Kenneth Walker. But on the flip side, right, Tampa Bay, man, I mean, this team, they lose to Philly, right? Obviously in a close game, Baker throws that interception at the end. But they, like we've said all season long, right? They've just found a way to win. They fight in every game. They go down to the wire. I'm interested to see how they get Godwin involved this week. He had 10 targets last week, right? They wanted to get him the ball. Obviously, only catches 3 of them. Targets, it's a shitty stat, right? Was it on Baker?
He had what, like 26 yards, something like that?
Yeah, on 3 catches.
I think his over under on yards is right around that mark too, which is a little crazy. Could be a bad beat, but
yeah. So tough one for anyone that bet on Godwin, but he's getting the targets, right? So I think the involvement in the offense, and Igbuka is just so special, so special. Obviously, it hurts not having Bucky Irving this week, but I think Rashad White is a serviceable back. You know, I know Buccaneers are the underdogs. I know that they're banged up and this, that, and the other thing. I'm gonna go with Tampa, right? I think I don't think that I don't think it says much about Seattle. I think this is such a coin flip game for me because
Yep.
they're both really good teams. But I can't bet against Baker, man. I just can't. He's too good. He's too clutch too. I know Sturb hates him, but he's he's just a dog, man. He makes you want to believe in him. Like
Yeah.
everything about him, the swagger, the bravado, like I'm like, man, I want to believe in that guy, and I'm gonna do it again this week. I'm gonna take the Bucs.
Yeah, I think if Baker Mayfield wasn't on the Bucs, I would love watching him play. As an Oklahoma fan too, like I wanted Baker to be successful in the NFL. Of course, he had to end up on the Bucs and one of my rival teams. But I think Baker Mayfield's a really talented quarterback, and I think he plays really well every week. Obviously, he has really good receivers around him, but like you see other quarterbacks with good receivers, and sometimes they struggle. He's just been really productive both of the last 2 years. The Seahawks on the other side, I think their offense is really good. I think their defense is really good. I think the Seahawks can pull this one off at home. I'm going to go with the Seahawks here. But again, another coin flip matchup. I think this one and the Broncos Eagles are both the matchups to watch. And these are really, really fun games, especially for the playoff rankings, right? For both the AFC for the Broncos and then the NFC for all the other teams. This is huge for the playoffs. So this is a really fun matchup and one to watch for playoffs. Moving on to this isn't even really a matchup. It's the Lions taking on the Bengals here. Obviously, the Bengals and Zach Taylor are if you put them at 32, I wouldn't be upset. And that's obviously due to injuries more than anything else. Obviously, Joe Burrow. If they have Joe Burrow, they're not 32. Without Joe Burrow right now, though, they can't do anything on offense, and their defense is already ass. So it's like you're going down by a lot of points, right? You're going to be down, and then you can't pass the ball when the defense knows you have to pass the ball to come back. And it just puts you in an impossible position to do anything. And obviously maybe this means that Joe Burrow maybe is the MVP of the NFL if he was able to keep this team just in every game seemingly last year. Like that says a lot more about Joe Burrow than it does anyone else on this team. I think Zach Taylor deserves to be fired. If they do anything dumb in this week again, because you're down 20 plus points, fourth quarter, and they punt the ball just like maybe your reasoning is you want to get your punter reps. Like maybe that's somehow a way you excuse it, but like
It was like 4th and 3 or something.
yeah, like dude, you're down 20 points. This is just waving the white flag worse than you already have the rest of the game. Just go for it. What do you have to lose at that point? But the Lions on the other side are playing possibly like the best team in the league right now. Their defense is really doing well, and their offense is firing on all cylinders. David Montgomery obviously didn't have as productive as a week this week as he did 2 weeks ago. But I think that team is still really, really good. Whoever runs the ball is solid, and they have receivers for days over there. So I'm going to have to go with the Lions in this one by at least 20 points. Ty, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, echo all your points, right? Zach Taylor, he's got to get fired. I mean, he was so bad in that game.
Yeah.
Coaching wise, he was so bad, and then he's just flipping out on every penalty. It's like, dude, how about you like worry about like the personnel that you're putting out there, like the play calling, something like that, right? Like your guys are actually just bad, right? Like that's why they're getting penalties because they're bad football players, and you're coaching them poorly. So it's just, I don't know, man. It was a joke. And Browning too I don't know what happened to him. Like he had a really good, fill in for Burrow a couple years ago. He can't get Chase or Higgins the ball. And I understand they're playing the Broncos, but there were some opportunities there, to get them the football. This team's just in disarray, right? Jamar's all pissy because he's not getting the ball, and they can't run the football. They don't have a defense, and then they happen to be going up against to me the best team in the NFL right now, right? Like the Lions might score 50 again. Like there is no way that Jahmyr Gibbs is so athletic, right? Like
Yeah.
Emo might just run them over. Like J-Mo just might run by their corners. Amon-Ra Laporta, right? Like, they have more players on that offense that will score a touchdown than like might catch the ball for Cincinnati. Like, they're going to destroy them. It's not going to be a close game at all. And the Lions going to beat the crap.
And here's the thing: they have Dan Campbell too, who will literally just go out of his way to embarrass whatever the other team is on the other side. Like he will just do whatever it takes, just be like, "F you, I'm a better coach. We're a better team." Yeah, like they will just do whatever it takes to kill metaphorically the other team. So I think the Lions just blow them out here in this one.
They might score 70.
They could. Ty would be very, very relieved.
I pray.
Yeah, he would be very relieved if they scored 70. So that would be more talked about
70 watch.
than the Dolphins scoring 70 a few years ago. Moving on to the Commanders taking on the Chargers. Jaden Daniels should be back for this one. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Jaden Daniels back. The Commanders, I don't know, man. I don't know about this team right now. Like defensively, they don't look that great. They don't really have a run game. I thought Bill was going to be their guy. And they're like running Chris Rodriguez and
McNichols.
McNichols. Yeah, like that's just, I don't know. Obviously, Jaden gives them a huge bump offensively, but I don't think it's enough against this Chargers team, right? The Chargers obviously had a small bump last week against the Giants, but defensively, they're a very talented team. I think they have the ability to cause, Jaden Daniels to have a little bit of, a moment like he did against Green Bay, right? Like they have a pretty good pass rush, but then you bring in Derwin James, who is, when they blitz him, like it is so dangerous because of how athletic he is. And I think Jaden has not done well against pass rushers so far this season. Obviously, limited sample size, but that Green Bay game, he looked lost, right? So
it was rough.
Yeah, and I think Herbert, he's obviously going to bounce back. This offense is too talented across the board to not play well. The only guy who was playing well was Marion Hampton. He looks like a monster. I mean, if you saw that one run that he had, the one run where he ran over like 7 dudes, right? Like that's against a really good New York Giants defense too, right? Like, especially that front. So I'm going to go with the Chargers here. I hate picking a division opponent, but this is a very, very good team. And the Commanders, I don't know. This game, for me, in my mind, this sends the Commanders either way up or way down, right? If you beat this Chargers team and you can come out and make a statement win, right? You can be, I'll call them a top 10 team, right? They're on the brink right now for me. They lose. I'm starting to question, like, is this Jaden Daniels like sophomore slump? Like, what's going on with this team, right? Like, is Cliff Kingsbury still a good play caller, right? There's going to be a lot of questions that are going to be held around this Commanders team if they lose this game, even though the opponent that they're playing is good.
Yeah, no, I echo all your points. I think the Chargers win this one. I think they're the better team. And I think the big story here is the defense for the Commanders, right? I think the Chargers have too good of a passing game. I think you have 3 receivers, right? We expected Ladd McConkey to be the top guy. He's the 3rd guy right now. Keenan Allen is obviously 2nd. Quentin Johnston coming alive.
You think Q is above Keenan?
I think 100% he is right now. I think based on production. Obviously, I think Keenan Allen, right, is probably more polished, and he's a vet. I think he has the better hands. But Quentin Johnston is, I mean, electric right now. He's number 4 receiver in fantasy. It's ridiculous. Who expected that?
Yeah.
Like honestly, I don't think anyone expected that. And if you picked him in fantasy, you are struck a gold mine if he continues to play like this. And I think he will. This Commanders defense.
There's no chance in hell. This guy's got brick hands.
I think
no way
it happens. Like this I'm trying to trade for him right now in one of my dynasty leagues. I think it happens. I'm buying high on him. I don't even care. I will go get Q because I believe in him. I believed in him in college too. I'll say that. I was high on him in the draft. And I think maybe it just took a couple of years for him to click and maybe
to learn how to catch the ball.
Exactly.
Jesus
sometimes you need a little bit of time. Maybe the jugs machine, you're not seeing it right. I don't know.
Maybe he got LASIK like Jameis.
Yeah, maybe. And let me say that about the Bengals real quick. I think Jameis could be the savior for them. Not obviously. I don't think there's any savior, but for the fantasy owners out there, Jameis would be a savior just for chucking it up, just feeding.
Oh yeah, for Jamar.
Chase and T just 50-yard bombs. It's picked. But if it's not, see, there's a lot of points there for the fantasy owners. But anyways, the Chargers are my pick here for this one. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, we got the Patriots taking on the Bills. The Bills obviously already talked about with the Saints. They were in a close game with us, right, until they pulled away at the very end of the game. You had Dalton Kincaid running against Carl Granderson, our lineman. Like, that's a tough cover. That was not great. And they obviously they scored on that play and won the game. The Patriots on the other side played well last week. And Drake May is playing like a top 10 quarterback in the league right now. He's absolutely lights out. This is a tough matchup just because they're at home. I'm going to give it to the Bills. I'm going to pick for them until they lose and show me otherwise. They're just too big of a regular season juggernaut. And they're a team that if they play the first 3 quarters poorly, we've seen it a couple times now in this season. They play the first 3 quarters poorly. The fourth quarter, Josh Allen just turns something on in his brain where he's like, okay, we got to go score, guys. Let's go score. And they do it. They just score at whatever it takes and put points on the board to come back. So I got to go with the Bills here, beating the Patriots at home. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, one thing I forgot to add: the Lions are my second lock over the Bengals. I mean, I felt like that had to be obvious, but
shit, I did forget to say that as well. But I'll pick the Chargers as my lock. Switch it up there. I'll flip it to the Chargers. I'll flip it to the Chargers. It's bold, but I'll take the Chargers.
All right. Anyways, yeah, Buffalo in my eyes, right? I think I said this last week. Very similar to Tampa Bay, right? They might not play that well, like you said, in the first 3 quarters, but they flip a switch and their clutch is all hell. So, the Patriots team, obviously they looked good last week, but they've been very up and down, up and down. I talked about them last week, maybe being like just like a Justin Herbert with the Chargers early on, right? Drake May plays outstanding, pats the stats, right? Like plays really well, but the team around him it doesn't do enough. Last week was kind of a good showing for them, I guess, but it was against the Panthers. Like it's not a good football team. So I'm going to give Buffalo this one, especially being at home. I think they roll.
Yeah, and it's a primetime game. Like I just think like they had the last primetime game, and obviously the Dolphins, like it didn't end up being the best results, but I think that the fans, you saw how crazy the fans are going. I think that's a really good home field advantage.
3 primetime games in the first 4 weeks.
In a lot of home games. Home games.
And the Vikings, have they been on primetime every game so far? If you consider
at least
the
like
London?
Except for the
Chicago.
Yeah.
I think
Chicago was a
Sunday Night
primetime,
Football, right?
The Colts game. Or no, not the Colts. The Bengals game wasn't primetime. That was it. Wait.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're in week
that's
5.
it. That's it. But yeah, I think 4 games where they're televised, so good for them. But the Bills, home a lot of games and a lot of primetime games. I mean, justifiably so, but it is crazy seeing that. Moving on to Monday Night Football, Ty. This is a fun matchup too with the Chiefs, the way they played. We got the Chiefs taking on the Jaguars. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, similar to the Commanders, right? This is a point in time for the Chiefs where they either go, I have them at 9, I think, in my power rankings right now. They stay in that region for me, or they really, really plummet. I like Jacksonville. I think, they're showing some good things. I don't think they've really played that many great teams. Obviously, last week they beat the 49ers, but Brock Purdy was banged up, and that whole team is now banged up. And, I think it was still a quality win, but this team is still kind of figuring themselves out. Obviously, Shane Waldron has ruined their wide receiver room. But Brian Thomas Jr. seemingly did get a little bit more involved last week after, the Jaguars came out and said, we're going to feed him the ball, right? They did feed him the ball. He wasn't able to score, but, he had a decent showing, better than some of the other weeks that he had. But I don't know, man. I feel like for me, the way that Jacksonville's defense is playing right now, one of the better units in the league right now, forcing a lot of turnovers against a Chiefs team that is improving-ish, but Mahomes has thrown some picks in his career. He's thrown more picks in these past couple of years than he has in his career. So, I think this is an opportunity for the Jags to come out, get a statement win. I'm going to go with them. It's not my upset of the week. I don't really see it as that much of an upset. They do have the better record right now. I think a lot of people probably think, oh yeah, the Chiefs, right? They're better than the Jags, but Jaguars defensively are playing really, really well, and their offense has a lot of potential. Where the Chiefs, their offense they got better, but they beat up on a bad team last week, or banged up team last week, I should say, and their defense is meh, right now. So I'm gonna go with Jacksonville.
Yeah, I almost went with Jacksonville for the same reasonings as you. I think that they have a better defense than the Chiefs, and that was like one of my reasonings. Whereas I think the receiver room for the Jags right now, like it just is screwed over by Shane Waldron, and you don't like seeing that. I don't think their offense is the best. I'm still not sold on them. I think they've played. I mean, I'm a fan of the 49ers, and I think they were a solid team, but I think they were getting a little overrated. If in my opinion, at this point in time, they were being a little overrated based on their opponents. And I think the Chiefs come out and win this one. I don't want to pick them because obviously I need that 9-8 prophecy to somehow be fulfilled so that I look good on TikTok and I can run a little victory lap. But I do think the Chiefs come out and win this one. They have momentum going into this. They obviously both teams do, but I think the Chiefs, they're starting to build again. And I think once they get hot, I think it's hard to slow them down. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs here beating the Jags. And like you
This
said,
in
Titus,
Jacksonville, right?
yes, in Jacksonville. It could be huge for the Jags. If they beat the Chiefs here, this maybe lifts the Jags up even more. Maybe they become a team that it puts the league on notice. But I think the Chiefs win this one here.
Yeah.
Moving on to our what's it called? What was I calling them recently? I'm trying to think. Just
fantasy sleeper of the week.
I was gonna say like quick discussions, rapid fire discussions. That's what I was going to say. Moving on to our rapid fire discussions here. Fantasy sleeper of the week. Obviously, you guys know the drill. Ty, who's your fantasy sleeper of the week?
Yeah, I talked about him a little bit earlier in the Cardinals game. It's going to be Amari DeMarcado versus the Titans. He was definitely involved last week. He had a receiving touchdown. So, I think he has a pretty strong hold on that role over Michael Carter because he's been involved in that offense, especially as a pass catcher. I think his ability is, a lot of times you have a good running back that, his role is not as cemented because he's not a great pass catcher. Thinking like Derrick Henry, right? Justice Hill gets reps, and he with Benson DeMarcado was getting reps, right? Like obviously they have, Derrick Henry is a different story. It's huge upside, but there's room for someone else to kind of get in and get some points.
Yep.
I think with DeMarcado's ability as a pass catcher, it kind of just negates that for Michael Carter. And Michael Carter, I don't know, he doesn't wow me in any ways. But 10 points last week as the backup running back. Titans allowed 23.5 points per game to running backs, which is one of the higher rankings in the fantasy world right now. And I just think that, this game, right, the Cardinals need to get their pass game going. What better way than to dink and dunk down to Amari DeMarcado, right? Benson had like 4 catches last week too. So, kind of funnel that more into him. I think especially in PPR leagues, he's a really good flex play for guys that, again, he had 10 points last week. No reason that he can't be a 15, 20-point guy if he has the stronghold on this running back position against a team that's allowing more than 20 points per game to fantasy running backs.
Yeah, I like it. And my guy, this might not be the biggest sleeper. It might be more of a start sit discussion. And maybe there's people out there debating starting him. And if you're doing that, don't, because this guy is going to go off again. I got Quinshon Judkins here as my technically sleeper. I think he has a really good game. He's scored two straight touchdowns in 2 straight games, a touchdown in 2 straight games. And then also the Vikings just let Kenneth Gainwell, who is in my eyes a less talented running back, go off. He had 99 yards on 19 carries and 2 touchdowns. And then on top of that, he had 35 yards on 6 receptions. So Quinshon Judkins, not as good of a receiver. He still has to kind of gain that, I think, in his game. But I think running, I think he'll be able to run the ball. And Dylan Gabriel being the starter here, I think they're going to be relying on that run game. So I think the Browns kind of have another good game here on the run. And I think Quinshon Judkins has a good game. So if you're debating sitting him over, someone else starting over him, I think you got to put him in your lineup. I think he's a lock this week as far as fantasy goes. Moving on to our hot takes here. Ty, what's your hot take of the week?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the Browns game. Kind of talked about this guy a little bit earlier. I think this is the Isaiah Bond breakout game. I think really? 70 yards and a touchdown, I think is very attainable for Mr. Bond. With Cedric Tillman out, right, and Dylan Gabriel stepping in at the quarterback position, who I mentioned, right, they've obviously been working together on the second team a ton. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Bond to come in and cement himself as the wide receiver 1, especially with Judy struggling. Bond led the team in receiving last week with 3 catches and 58 yards. So I think that he is kind of working himself into that role. Obviously, he was a very talented player in college, had the off the field troubles, and that's why he went undrafted, but he was cleared of all that. Now he's with the Browns, right? And he's working himself up. So I think hot take of the week, Isaiah Bond breakout game, 70 plus yards and a touchdown.
I like it. My hot take is kind of the opposite of a breakout game. I got Geno Smith throwing 2 picks and being benched, and Kenny Smallhands taking the reins in Las Vegas. I think obviously Geno Smith, right? 3+ picks in multiple games already through week 5. Like that's a terrible look. And he has another multi-pick game. And the Colts defense is a team that, it's possible against. They're not the best defense, but they're a solid one nonetheless. That's a team that he could do that against. And if he's doing that, I think you got to take a look at Kenny Pickett. Right now, the Raiders are trying to become a better team, right? And Kenny Pickett's younger than Geno Smith. So I think it's a conversation you have to consider if Geno Smith struggles yet again in this one. And that's going to be my hot take. I think that's a fun one here. Anyways, that'll do it for this episode. You guys know what to do. You guys know to comment down below your thoughts on the games. If you guys disagree or agree with our takes, comment down below. We love to hear what you guys think. You know where to find us on social media at Jenks Island and wherever you get your podcast at Jenks Island as well. We'll see you guys next week.